All right, y'all, we're going to go ahead and get started. So thanks to all of you for joining us today. My name is Olivia Tincani, and I am the program curator for IAC's Meat to Market program, which is a partnership between us and the Southwest Grass-Fed Livestock Alliance. For those of you that don't know the Southwest Grass-Fed Livestock Alliance, or otherwise known as SWGLA, they are a small Santa Fe-based nonprofit organization. It's an alliance of ranchers, consumers, chefs, and land managers who work together to support local grass-fed livestock products in the Southwest through producer support and education and consumer and chef outreach. And I think y'all know a little bit about IAC at this point. So together, IAC and SWGLA have been running the Meat to Market program. And we started about 4 years ago with a long-term design, development, discovery phase. And what we ended up with is our extensive online business training for livestock producers all across Indian country, encouraging you all to embrace the possibility of direct marketing your meat and providing skills to do so. So we launched here 2 years ago, after that whole long process with some in-person workshops, but essentially we're an online training program, which means webinars, and we've got 4 workshops. We've had 2 already here today, and we've got 1 more tomorrow inside of the Meat to Market track. So we're excited to have y'all here for these more intimate, non-virtual, non-Zoom gatherings. So we have almost 30 courses in the Meat to Market program. There's a flyer up here with a QR code that you can scan to sign up to find out about future webinars. And all of them have been recorded and will continue to be recorded. They are available for free on IAC's e-learning platform called Mighty Networks. So you can pop in on an a la carte basis and take which ones you choose to learn from, which I encourage you all to do, and we'll probably reference some of them today. And make sure that you also sign up if you would like to receive the presentation after the fact today. We'll be happy to send it out to you, as well as the little handout that's sitting on your chair. Happy to send that to you as well, but you have it in your hands. And we're going to reference that today too. We also have an amazing opportunity next year for anybody that's actually living in the Southwest for free one-on-one business advising related to anything having to do with your meat business. It can be your livestock business that you're getting ready to convert to a direct meat business as well, or it can be just a dream. It doesn't have to be actualized yet. And it's 10 hours of time with me talking about anything under the sun that has to do with anything that doesn't have to do with production. So all the back end of your business. And that's being supported by SWGLA. We have a few slots left for next year. There's a separate sign up here a separate flyer that I'd love for y'all to take a look at if that applies to you. And then lastly, we'll be doing a little bit of speed consulting tomorrow afternoon. I'll be based here at the IC table, and there's a sign up for a quick half-hour hangout to talk about what pain points you have, or dreams or joys. So leave me your name and your phone number, and I'll text you to find a time to do that tomorrow if you'd like to. We also begged IAC to put us at the end of today. I appreciate y'all's sticking with us here, and we asked them to put it at the end so that we could have a little bit more time with you all. We have a wonderful panel of speakers. So Chance and I are going to talk for about 40 minutes or so, and then we're going to ask our speakers to come up here and have the bulk of our time in a roundtable discussion with them. So I really encourage you all to stick around, go out, get some more coffee, come back in if you're feeling a little low energy, because you'll definitely want to stick around. So again, my name is Olivia. I'm an independent educator and consultant. I teach business skills to farmers and ranchers. And I'm going to pass it to Chance just to introduce himself.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for sticking around. It is a little late in the day, but I promise you it will be worth it. Like I said, my name is Chance. I'm the Director of Food Sovereignty for a nonprofit in South Dakota called Thunder Valley. We have quite a few projects going on there, everything from a regenerative poultry system, which I've seen plenty about today. We've also seen do a lot of market gardening, no-till market gardening. We also do some thermophilic composting for our regenerative composting program that can account for meat and dairy scraps. And also we're just about to launch our regenerative bison program, which will be on about 40,000 acres near the Badlands National Park. So got plenty of background in agroecology, and also seen a few of my fellow past peers from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Don't hold it against me, but definitely experienced in a lot of levels. So.
Thanks, Chance. All right, we're going to tag team this presentation, so we're both going to hang out here very far away from y'all on this weird podium. Feel free to move up. Just don't sit in this row. I think our gentleman is instructing us, but y'all are welcome to come closer. So we're here today to talk about leadership skills and entrepreneurship. And this is a workshop that was one of the first ones that we did as part of the Meet to Market program, and I'm really excited to have it here in person with y'all again. So you already learned a little bit about us. There we are, looking cuter in the pictures probably. So the way that I approach business training is talking about a quadruple bottom line business. And our conversation about leadership is going to be rooted in values and values-driven and values-forward concepts, right? So what is the bottom line? I think that's probably what most of us had heard of, have heard of most commonly. It references the context of accounting, right? The bottom line number, it's essentially your profit, and it's a business that is looking at its bottom line as its main motivation. Then we've got something called triple bottom line businesses. What happened is environmentalists got all angsty and decided to introduce the idea of judging your business based on a couple of other factors, not just profit, but people and planet, and its effect on people and planet, as well as its ability to profit. And then, not so long ago, folks in business management, academia, got involved and said, well, what about purpose? What about our individual drive, right? And that's the quadruple bottom line. And it contributes this additional sense of like well-being. And you could define that as a spiritual center, a cultural center, and it's what essentially gives you meaning. And for me, this really resonated in terms of going about teaching business to people. It's like, I don't want to gauge your success based just on profit or your effect on the planet or your effect on your community, but also its effect on you, right? So here's a different way of defining purpose from a different culture. Ikigai is a Japanese word formed from two different words, one meaning life or alive, and one meaning effect or result or worth or benefit. And put these two together and you have a reason for being, and you have an intersection, the common ground between what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for. So you see that Venn diagram with Ikigai in the middle there, right? And here's a different version of that same concept with a little bit more explanation, right? When you've got these intersections of passion, which is the overlap of what you're good at and what you love, mission, what you love and what the world needs, vocation, what the world needs and what you can get paid for, and profession, what you're good at and what you can get paid for. So if we go back to quadruple bottom line businesses, and we've got, this is just a way to visualize what I'm talking about, right? People, planet, purpose, and prosperity around the outside, and in the center is the concept of this being what we would call a sustainable business. Here's a different way of looking at it, and I have a very strong opinion about what I think about these images. This one holds purpose is sort of holding profit and people and planet inside of it, right? Rather than it being an equal element. So our purpose in what we're doing is kind of like the vessel, to steal Kim's word, for our sustainable business model. So I just want y'all to hold this in terms of having a new set of, new matrix to think about your individual business and the way you think of yourself inside of it, right? And this applies to all of you who are not necessarily running businesses too. This is the way you show up in the world as well. So what are core values? Your handout is a core values exercise that I encourage you all to hang on to and explore as a follow-up to this session. So the core values are really the root of everything that your business does. They are the unchanging qualities that an organization deems most essential. They really should show up in everything that you do, right? They're like your beacon. They guide your decisions on an everyday basis. And it may seem sort of lofty. They may seem just like things that you think about and that you create and that you don't know exactly how they weave into daily life. But if you truly take the time to explore what your core values are for your business, which includes exploring what they are for you as a human, then you can have an aid in actually making hard day-to-day decisions. You put them up against those core values and see what holds water and what doesn't. They're your creed, they're your cornerstone for how you show up in the outward-facing version of your business. And it's what helps create a sort of consistent perception of your brand. And by your brand, I just mean who you are and what you do, right? And it should flow through into all that you put out into the universe. So ethical leadership, which is what we're here to talk about today, is knowing your core values and having the courage to integrate them with your actions and being mindful of the common good. So if we go back to our 4 of our quadruple bottom line, right? The business core values sow these seeds of success in terms of people, planet, profit, and purpose. And they help reveal your goals in each of those specific areas. And this is about learning to think and measure your organization or your business in other areas of capital, right? We know how to think about financial capital. We've been pretty well instructed to think about things in small business just according to financial capital. But what if we open that up and use this to tap into a broader vision of success and our definition as a leader that defines us through other currencies, right? So ecology, the study of home, and the economy, the management of home, right, are words that I think we get confused pretty frequently, right? So rather than money as a dominant culture leads us to believe what economy means, it's the management of our home, right? And ecology is the study of home. So how related are those? Let's ask profit to step aside and ask financial capital to step aside as the only thing we think about, and turn it on its head and see it as an equal priority in other measurements of wealth, right? Not just the primary goal. What if we measure our businesses in terms of other forms of capital that your work creates, like it's social capital, it's spiritual capital, it's physical capital, it's natural capital, it's intellectual capital, it's cultural capital. What are you contributing to each of those things by doing what you're doing? And this concept is something that's explored in this quick little article. And again, if you called 8 Forms of Alternative Capital, and it's linked in the presentation. So if you sign up, you'll get it and you can link right to it. So I'm going to pass it over to Chance for that little section.
So when we think of leadership, we immediately, for myself, tend to bring in things of our own culture. Being an enrolled member of the Lakota Nation, I think it's inherent, and I believe everyone here at the conference has aspects of this, what it looks like to reach first from that area of our lives before moving forward. And so this is going to hit on a little bit of that. Like I said, it is from a Lakota perspective, but it can just as easily be any relatives from all walks of life. And I'm sure there's similar concepts and similar words and similar beliefs. And so it's not just limited to, it's just, this is my perspective from that. So when we tend to look at regenerative ag and Lakota culture, in a lot of our work, especially in food sovereignty, When we go to conferences like this, especially non-native ones, we tend to get this statement of, oh, so you're doing regenerative ag through an indigenous lens. And it's like, you kind of have to laugh at it a little bit, and I'm sure everyone's aware, but it's one supersedes the other, that ours was from here and always has been from here. So we tend to look at this more as an intersection when we're looking at regenerative ag and what it looks like through leadership. When we look at things as mentioned here as like a teaching mechanism, I definitely believe that there's ways, and that we've seen that we can start to utilize our own indigenous regenerative ag principles. And I'll give you an example of one, is that when we speak to concepts and the way things work in our culture, especially from myself, if I brought up, if we're working with cows, buffalo, whatever it is, and I start to have the conversation with my grandma about what is carbon sequestration, and I see the eyes kind of glaze over, and it's just, whew, and it goes over the head. But when you start to relay the concepts of what's taking place, and you see, from my perspective, seeing her eyes perk up, and she starts to relay it back to me in Lakota. It was like, oh, what you're talking about is this. What you're talking about is that. That these things already exist within a lot of our cultures. And so definitely finding ways to bring those forward in simple conversations as far as what that looks like to translate a lot of our operations and our ways of knowing forward. And so another thing that we always tend to look at is being in a diverse population in terms of what, from an agroecological standpoint, and when we look at, we try to always diversify not just grass species, but we always tend to say that we're growing our underground herd, meaning soil health, microbes, and all that, with our above the ground herd. And so we tend to really weave these concepts together when we're looking from a regenerative ag perspective. And we're always trying to maintain and look at things as a leader would, as a lot of our leaders in our own tribes. Like, are we here with intention? Are we navigating from a sense of purpose? Are we rejecting being victims of circumstance? And I learned a lot of my lessons in leadership, especially in running ag operations. Some of them from my grandpa, who was in the Marines, and he had a very calm but stern way about relaying information. And one thing that, when I look at rejecting being victims of circumstance, he said our leaders would always look at things and think, what if? What if this were to happen? What if that were to happen? You have to assess that. But to take it a step further, you also have to start stepping into this realm of even if this happens, how are we going to go through that? And so definitely looking at ways to expand upon that in our own, I think is very, very needed, especially now. So when we look at a lot of our thinking from an indigenous perspective, we start to look at something that we call long arc strategy, that we look at not just 7 generations before, but 7 generations coming up. And so what we tend to see when we look at a lot of that is our ability not just to envision what we see on the horizon, for example. From a Lakota perspective, you get to see the horizon and then work back from that. And the way to work back from that is what obstacles would be preventing us from reaching the horizon, and almost like building a work-back plan. For those of you in nonprofits, work-back plans are always present, but being able to work back from the vision in terms of what obstacles are coming down the road, what can we see, what habits do we need to disrupt before we actually get to the point that we're needing to get to. And a lot of those things do come from being able to have that innate ability to be able to walk in 2 worlds, as you see mentioned here, of being able to not just navigate what this looks like from our own indigenous side of things, or for me being a Lakota person, but being able to actually navigate, oh, well, the lease is due on time, but you know what, I need to do things from my soil because, and it's having to weave those 2 things together, like I said, they're definitely present. But one of the biggest things I think in all of our cultures, not just from a Lakota perspective, but I think is really truly at the heart of indigenous ag, is that we're always trying to give back more than we're taking. You hear that echoed through all the presentations to hear that. How can we come up with ways that we can give back more than we're taking? Bringing it home to what Olivia talked about with the ikigai, there's concepts of this in all of our cultures. And so definitely when we look at the quadruple bottom line, what I always like to interject is we're looking at, it's easier for me in the ag sense of being able to look at the bottom line of your soil. Why would you want to look at your soil, but also looking at your animal health, but then also because those things are in line, you're going to have financial health. But prior to that, from an indigenous perspective of looking at the why of you would even want to take a look at soil health, I think is really home and hits home to our purpose, like I said, as indigenous operators. Is it yours? So a lot of times when we look at definitions of leaders, we got a lot of quotes here, and there's always things that resonated for me, and obviously you can see the one at the front, is that a seed planted in truth can weather all storms. Is that when you're looking at things from an operator sense or from environmentalist sense, whatever it is, that when we're doing things that when we're in alignment with, you tend to see how far a lot of those operations can go. And so what we tend to look at, in this example, when we always try to borrow when we can, and this was an example that was brought to me from one of my relatives from the Northwest, and we look at the totem pole example. I'm sure those of you who are from that area can also elaborate more than I can, but what was explained to me is that the totem pole, you always look at, you're almost like a stepping stone. In a Lakota sense, it's very similar that the most important person is usually on the bottom. That you're always the one that comes last. You're always the one that usually has to give up so that your people can go forward. And especially when we look at what it takes to be a leader and taking that personal inventory and that accounting of what limits or what abilities that you have to contribute to the whole, definitely go so much further. When I said, when we see this put into practice, when I look at a lot of our nations, we can see the result of that or defect of that.
So we're talking about different ways of defining leadership, right? Or actually similar ways of defining leadership. That's you, Ron. I stuck you in my presentation. Little preview for someone who's going to be up here in a minute. So I like to think of a definition of leadership that is about courage and the courageousness to lead as rooted in vulnerability, something that we often associate with weakness, right? But vulnerability can also really be the source of how we inspire other people. So leaders are not trained, but they actually evolve. They grow through the experience, guided by their own self-vision as a builder, with strengths that sort of slowly emerge in a natural rhythm based on self-love and exploration and that ability to be vulnerable. And if we go back to this idea of vocation and passion and purpose, then we're on our path to embracing our own sense of leadership and inspiring that in other people and instilling it in those around us, not just our employees, but everyone around us via our actions, is what I would define as a true leader. And I have some co-conspirators as well that I have learned from, and there's a nice sources slide at the end of this presentation. This is a quote from Brene Brown, who says, "Anyone who takes responsibility for finding the potential in people and processes, so other people and other processes, has the courage to develop that potential." So let's talk a little bit about theories of leadership, now that we've kind of defined it a couple different ways. One theory or course of study is called servant leadership. So this is a concept developed in 1970 by a guy named Robert Greenleaf, a legacy AT&T executive. This is like a corporate white guy, okay? And his essay that he wrote in the 70s recalls the archetypes in a book called Journey to the East by Hermann Hesse. And the lead characters, he sort of explores the archetypes of the two lead characters. One is the servant who acts with integrity and spirit, who builds trust, and in doing so lifts up the people around them and helps them grow. And then there's the leader, who's the already trusted person who shapes others' destinies, is out there alone, leading the way, doing their own thing. And Greenleaf says, what if we merge these two together and we make what could be thought of as a servant leader? Then leadership can be a long-term transformational way of life and work. Sound familiar? Sounds a lot like Ikigai. That has the potential for creating positive change in society. And what it means is that we as leaders are here, first and foremost, to serve our organizations, to serve the people around us, everything and everyone that is a part of them. And I like to convert this word servant leadership. I'm not terribly comfortable with the concept of servitude, given our cultural history here in the United States. And so I sort of shifted to service leadership, because that's really what we're talking about here. Your definition as a leader is about your service to others, first and foremost. And you are focusing on the growth and well-being of the people and the communities around you. And this is essentially another way of defining it is an ethical use of power, rather than just a de facto use of power. A servant leader uses power as little as possible, right? And that's kind of like the opposite of what we usually think about. It can be perceived as soft. There's a grand prejudice, at least in my non-native culture, that listening and empathizing goes against action and is the opposite of taking control. And what this theory posits is that it is the source of actual true leadership, right? So the servant leader is servant first, very different from one who is leader first, because perhaps of the need to assuage an unusual power drive. The difference between the two, the leader first or the servant first, manifests itself in the care taken by the servant. First, to make sure that other people's highest priority needs are being served. And the best test is, do those served grow as people? Do they, while being served, become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, and more likely themselves to be in service to others, which means more likely to be leaders themselves? So here's some key moral behaviors that are attempted rather than already possessed by what we consider a leader. They are acquired, which means they're achievable for everybody. Listening, empathy, healing, awareness, persuasion, conceptualization, foresight, stewardship, commitment. So leadership in this definition is separate from expertise. Expertise is a complement, it's an accompaniment. And leadership is not like a style of person. We always hear this like, oh, natural born leader, right? It's not charisma, it's not magnetism. Those are traits that can be assets when they're used well, but they can also sometimes be liabilities and weaknesses. So we're trying to debunk this old definition of that person who's just born this way. We don't need to depend on that. We need to find the leadership amongst ourselves, which starts with that service, right? Let's cultivate our own leadership. It's possible for everyone. It's accessible.
So when we also look at things, obviously from a Lakota perspective, and like I said, this is applicable across the board for all the other nations that have their versions of leader, and we may just say it in very different ways, but when we look at our leaders in the past, you always have that, again, that self-accounting, that inventory of your personal traits, your characteristics, limitations, that acute self-awareness, that sense of belonging or responsibility that you have, carrying different abilities or talents or foresight that you may have, the ability to share that, and also being selfless, always looking at the whole rather than the individual, and then integrity, I think, goes hand in hand with any leader, specifically in Indigenous sense, though, because it's the ability to do the right thing when no one's watching. And so one of the biggest parts of it is that vision or that self-talk of being able to see the horizon. Like I said, going back to that long arc strategy, being able to see the horizon and being able to translate not just to others, but to yourself. And obviously being ambitious, being able to put that vision to action when you need to, and being proactive in a lot of your movements towards that, being observant. And as you can see through a lot of these, this can be just as applicable to business or ag or any other facet, coaching basketball, whatever it might be. Again, but being observant, being thoughtful, analytical, being able to take a lot of the information and being able to put it in an adaptable way. So that was for me. So I put not a lot, but a few Lakota words from a Lakota perspective of what a lot of these characteristics look like. And so it's just to give you an idea, if you're from another nation, of what I'm sure you have your own words, which I would love to hear for a lot of these things. First one being resiliency, which is wakishake, being able to have that perseverance through anything, to being able to be assertive or ambitious, which is chakeshni. Another one being an understanding or realization, and I really like this word. It's wichwablezebit. It's more of a communal understanding, not just an understanding or realization for a person, but you notice in a lot of our words, we tend to have a lot of we in them. And so with this one, it's a group understanding or realization, which I always found was really beautiful. And then adaptability, being able to make the most. My grandpa always used to say it's being able to make the most use of the littlest amount possible. And so to do that, you're being Lakota, they call it. Having the ability to have compassion and kindness, that empathy, that ability to see to the heart of things, which is waushila. Another one is foresight, being able, like I said, we're always going back to the horizon of being able to see things coming or learn from the past and put those two together, which is ichiksapa. The other one is being humble. And I think at the core of all our leaders that we've always seen this come through, which is wa'ushichie. So it's just, okay. And so when we look at indigenous entrepreneurialism, we tend to see our identity come through in quite a few ways of looking at alternative forms of capital. I think, was it on another slide? But looking at different ways that we tend to barter, we tend to build a lot of our efforts in certain ways that model what we used to do. But like I said, at the core of all of them, I keep going back to this. And so if there's something you guys take away from this, it's this common acknowledgement about something greater than the individual, and that respect and acknowledgement of that being in agroecology, being rancher and everything else myself, and seeing things firsthand, my grandpa always used to relay it to me that, yes, we can do all the things we need to do. We can graze how we need to graze. We can put in implements or amendments, whatever we need to do to our operations to have them flourish, but they don't have to. And so definitely always having that acknowledgement that the fact that they do and being appreciative of that, I think is one of these things that really tend to shine through in a lot of things. And always looking at not just the sum of their parts, but looking at, it's a really fitting photo that Olivia had put on here of this heart, because of the fact that being very indigenous mindseted, Lakota mindset, whatever you want to call it, and being able to recognize, for example, in the human body or any body, of seeing the need for the heart, for the lungs, for the blood, for the skin to be able to hold the blood pressure together, for every working component of a body, of animal, human, whatever it is, those things need to be organized. So the organization needs to work together, that if that doesn't happen, those things cannot come together or coalesce. And then also, like I said, we really see a lot of selflessness in a lot of our leadership traits of our great leaders, and a lot of successful examples of what we've seen here today about giving more, the emphasis on giving more than we're taking in every sense of it. And being able to leave things better than we found them. I'm sure a lot of you guys came from several ways of life and teachings about you guys' operations, but always leave things how you found it. You come across the gate, it's closed. Close the gate when you go through. Just really simple things. And a lot of times, I think when we see the self-interest in something, when we look at how our own efforts can be utilized, I think we really tend to focus on ways that we can, in most leaderships, in most organizations, operations, whatever it be, finding that happy medium of being able to not just be contributing, but also be seeing our efforts where they're going. And so, like I said, going back to that, whole is a greater sum of our parts. And something here that my cousin said was really profound, and I think I'm sure a lot of you have seen it also, but it's from Nick from NDN, and that he said, if we want to transform the world, our vision has to be as great as the challenges we are faced with, which really resonates on a lot of levels for not just myself.
So that's our lead-in for leading from failure, right? And I think just to go back to this last slide real quick, what we see here is the putting together of these two sort of methodologies, right? That servant or service leadership and Indigenous leadership have multiple commonalities. And everything that Chance has gone back to is that the others and the body of the whole is first and foremost, right? Rather than that leader out front. You can't have a body that functions without all the organs working together, and they're non-hierarchical, right? So Nick's quote leads us into how we interpret those challenges. And leadership means seeing failures and hardship as opportunity. In general, that's pretty much just a frame of mind. It's changing your perspective to see them as such. It's transforming failures into opportunities. And that, to me, is a key leadership tactic. That is your superpower, because our failures are actually oftentimes more meaningful, they're more instructive, more profound than any of the successes. They're like these little openings that allow us to find a pathway towards transformative change and growth, and a source of strength and an instrument of improvement rather than just a mistake. And what if we changed our perception of those mistakes and those challenges to be the openings and the pathways towards greatness? If we didn't have the failures, we would be terribly naive. We would be very unprepared. And we wouldn't even know what success actually is, because we would have nothing to define it as, right? The shadow side is sometimes much more revealing than the light side. So don't feel protective of your failures, especially I think in the ranching community. It's very common to literally share nothing. And I'm encouraging you not just to share what you do, but share the hard things, right? Seek peer advice, sharing, community, teach others, alongside learning from these things yourself. Really, there's no room for pride and ego here, right?
And the other last one here is also a quote from my grandpa, but you hear that a lot of times when you do the work that you need to do to start businesses, operations, whatever it might be, to just get started. Get started right now with what you have. Get started right now where you're at with what you have. But he had two schools of thought, building off the top of each other, was that you fail forward. That when you try, you fail, but you fail forward every time at what you do. When you get better at that, fail forward faster. And so I think that's where we tend to leave things from this side of things. But the quote at the bottom again here has really just been impactful and really not just to me, but a lot of those around me. But your level of success will never be able to surpass your level of effort, which I think is really, really important, especially with a lot of the work that everybody's doing. So we like to spend a little bit of time, usually more time in this presentation, on how to actually do these things. So one tool is actually starting to convert your thinking about your business as where you spend your time, whether it's in or on your business, or whether it's on yourself. So what does that mean? Working in the business is actually like the day-to-day core production, sales. It is what the business produces, right? But working on your business never feels as pressing as working in your business. You got to get it done, right? It's super easy to overlook it, but it's actually necessary to work almost more on your business than it is to work in your business in order to work efficiently in the business. So these are your organizational systems, your operational processes, marketing, stakeholder engagement. That just means like talking to people, right? Finding cool people that are going to facilitate more of what you do. Financial analysis, come talk to me about that. I love telling you why I want you to do that and why it's going to make your life easier. Strategic planning and visioning, same thing. Research, business and community outreach. These is all equally
and potentially more important than your day-to-day work. And then there's you working on yourself as a leader. We've spent some time talking about what those leadership qualities can be, and you can develop them. And so often the best way to do that is to go get inspired. Y'all are already here inside of this conference, which means you've already chosen a few days to set aside for yourself. So kudos to you. But it means actually carving out time for professional development and learning and sharing and going and seeing other people's work and going on farm and talking story, talking to your community members, finding your elders. So some more concrete ways of working in and on the business. We suggest 2 hours a week working on the business at least. That's not very much. I know y'all can do that. And like Jen said, this goes for you all who are running organizations. It goes for you if you're running a household. I kind of think this presentation is fine for parenting advice as well, as a mom. And then there's also big picture planning and thinking. So how do you carve out time for that? It's actually scheduling it. And I'd like to think that you could take a half day to do that every 6 months. I really want you to do it every quarter, but it's cool if you do it every 6 months. It'll be massive success. Have a morning practice. This is something that Chance and I were talking about recently that I think is so incredibly valuable. And I don't know if you want to talk about that and how you do it, and then the next one.
So a really good example, again, of having a morning practice. Something that exists in all our cultures is having that relationship to the world around us, and one of us being in our Lakota star knowledge is having those morning practices with the morning star, of being able to wake up early. Leads into every almost aspect of my life, I think, that I've seen, whether it's ag operations, school, work, hunting, whatever it might be, but definitely having those morning practices to set aside time for yourself to get your thoughts together, whatever connection you need to make to the world, however you practice that. But then also another thing coming out of this is work splits. Not everybody can do this the same way or the same time frame, but one thing that we tend to do that works in a lot of our areas is doing a 60-40-20 work split, of being able to have 60 minutes, like I said, you can adjust these however you see fit, but being able to have 60 minutes to focus on a meeting, call, working on the business, whatever it might be, and then having, but just sheer focus of 60 minutes, whether it's devoting to that call, meeting, whatever it might be, 40 minutes to your admin stuff, your emails, your, just like I said, admin stuff throughout the day. I'm speaking for myself. And then 20 minutes of, if you can, being able to get up and recharge, whether that's go for a walk or other physical activity you may need to do, and then having rounds of those throughout the day to boost productivity is definitely beneficial.
And like when we were talking about this, I naturally do a 2 hour, and then like a 1 hour. 2 hours of like big thinking work, 2 hours of dumb email, catch up, and then try to take like an hour, which usually translates into 20 minutes, but it's okay. Some sort of like break, physical, get up and move, and then start over again. That's just what naturally sort of my cycles. So whatever works for you. Carve out time to do all of this bigger thinking work. And that just means putting it in the schedule, like actually put it in your agenda. And I cannot highly recommend enough time for annual strategic planning. That's a fancy word for just thinking big and thinking about what your dreams are and putting it on paper. And I don't care if it's on a sticky note or you make a big map out of watercolors, or if you go through a whole strategic planning and visioning process, which I would love to talk to you about if you're interested in it. And think of it like a sabbatical or a retreat if you can isolate time and space to do that, which is a luxury, but your business will ultimately benefit so much more from you carving out that time. And then take some time throughout the year to look backwards and say, oh, did I do those things? Create some benchmarks for yourself. And then you adapt. It's okay if you didn't do them. You at least have had the conversation with yourself about why. So a couple more, I'm going to sort of move quickly through these so we can get our speakers up here. A couple of slides on execution. Communicate your vision. You don't have words? Make some words up, right? Spend some time, schedule some time to think about the words. What's your mission statement? what are your core values? Now you have a tool to exploring your core values. And in our sources, we've got some great books that also talk a lot about creating a mission and a vision. Share them with your team. Don't just hoard them for yourself. Share them with the people that are engaging with you in your business every day. And commit to those plans that you make, right? Follow through. Learning and teaching, that's a two-way street. I cannot press this one enough. Make time to learn each week. Make time to teach each month, and engage your staff and your volunteers and your interns, your apprentices, or your romantic partners, whoever. Engage them to teach as well, not just learn from you. Give this service to your staff, your volunteers, your vendors, your processor, the postman, whoever is involved in your day-to-day business, as you would to your own customers. Treat people with dignity, show that you care, appreciate them. Customer service is essentially a sales initiative. You are never going to get the service you want unless you are able to give it. And that includes to the people around you. Acceptance and adaptation. This one was a vital learning curve for me as an entrepreneur. You are not in control of very much. You're actually probably not in control of anything as a small business owner. And so Ari Weinzweig is an entrepreneur and a business teacher, and his books are listed at the end of here. And he says, recognize that as much as we love control and as much as we believe that being a leader means being in control, most of the time, being a leader means being comfortable when you are out of control. And the only thing that you can count on in small business is that you have no idea what the world will be throwing at you. And I think for those of us that have been entrepreneurs or are entrepreneurs, we have all lived this. So it's a matter of accepting it and actually carving out time for it and understanding that that is your reality. And again, turning your mindset over to recognize those hardships or those fires that you have to put out all the time as beneficial teaching tools for you, making you a better leader bit by bit, right? Never give up a goal of improvement. And so never expecting that you've gotten there already. Continue to strive forward, which means investing time and money and energy into your own learning process and your pathway to foster new ideas. And then believe that you can do the impossible. I almost took this one out. But then the last time I gave this presentation, somebody came up to me and said, I think that's the most important thing you said, is that you gave me license to believe in the impossible. It is what lots of people don't do. So go that extra mile. It is what sets you apart, is to continue to believe in the impossible and not give up. So with that, believing in the impossible note, I would love to ask our speakers to come up here, Gilbert Lewis and Kimberly Ratcliffe and Ron and Carol Brownotter. If you guys can come on up, we're going to have a little conversation with some folks that Chance and I decided whether they wanted to be considered as such or not, our leaders in our agricultural community. So we're going to sit down and chat, and we're going to take about, half hour, 40 minutes. And I would love for each of you, come on in, to tell us who you are. Tell us your name. Where is your operation? What do you grow and raise? Where do you sell it? Just a little tidbit about each of you.
Ron Brownotter, Hunkpapa Lakota from Standing Rock Sioux Tribe. I raised buffalo for 23 years on 20,000 acres. And currently, right now, we got a contract with the USDA for buffalo burger for the commodity program for North Dakota.
Hi, I'm Ron's wife, Carol Brownotter. I grow and raise children. I'm Ron's partner, and I support him in everything that he does, and I'm known for being the cook.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kimberly Ratcliffe. I am from a little town in Oakwood, Texas. My family raises beef cattle, so I raise everything from start to finish. I also participate in the same program, but I supply beef to the Houston area. I also do quite a bit of wholesaling beef to some hotels and some larger restaurants.
Good evening, everybody. Gilbert Lewis III from New Mexico. I'm from the Pueblo of Acoma. Have a cow-calf operation, registered Black Angus and commercial Black Angus cattle. I also process my own beef, sell my own beef, and so it's been quite a journey, quite an experience, and something that I just had to try and jump in and learned a couple of shortcuts along the way. So hopefully I can share some of those shortcuts with you guys, so you guys don't make the same mistakes that I made. And I think that just kind of the whole gist of this is, how do we be better? How do we do better by our neighbors, the audience? Because again, we're here for a reason, a cause, something that's dear to our heart. And so just looking at that and how we can be impactful. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. Feel super honored to be up here next to all of you, and thank you for taking the time to be here. So our first question is, what defined leadership for you as a young person? And how has that changed since you have evolved and grown? And what is it to you now?
As a young person at 12 years old, I knew what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a rancher. And I lived on my parents' little place, and we had a few horses and cattle in the garden and chickens and a milk cow. And when I go to school, they would give me a check once a month, and I'd buy a tool like a shovel or an axe, because I knew I needed those in the future. And fast forward, I did 10 years in the Marine Corps and got honorable discharge and a good conduct medal in there twice. So that means I straightened my crap out and learned from that. So they taught me some skills, accomplished the mission, never quit, lead by example. I don't have any of my workers do anything that I haven't done. I take care of them, whether it's food. You can't work with an empty stomach. Little things like that. That's what I do in our operation. So that's been really productive, and I love what I do.
Growing up, I grew up in California, and we have out there a Indian center, and I did a lot of volunteering in that program with my mom and dad. And I was very active, and I created a teen club, and of course we needed officers, and we did lots of involvement. So leadership has been in my life ever since I've been growing up, and I active in all kinds of programs where I live in organizations. So I just carry that, and of course with Ron and everything, we work really well together when it comes to leadership.
For me, I moved around a lot when I was younger. My dad worked for IBM, and I always teased everyone I've been moved. And I had the honor of moving pretty much every year and a half to 2 years. So for me, it was making quick friends and wherever I was. And then it reached a point where my dad's job finally moved us to the headquarters in New York. And my mom's enough, these people have to prove themselves. And I was a pretty good athlete. I'm pretty tall, and I played basketball. So leadership for me was a little different when I was younger. Leadership for me was kind of going into a community and making the friends that I could in that community, and then continuing prospering those people in my community if it was athletics or something like that. Then I decided that I was going to stay in New York for a while, and I ended up working on Wall Street for a couple years while I was there. And I had the job of being over public relations and marketing. So, that leadership's a little different. I had the responsibility of actually presenting knowledge, presenting opportunities to a job. I worked for Bloomberg, so I had the opportunity to go up every Monday and give a Monday day report. So people were looking to me to give information every Monday to them. In return, come to me, and I had to present that information. So it was a little different. And then when I decided to leave Wall Street and come back to the ranch, and the reason why I left Wall Street to come back to the ranch is because there's a true disconnect. Being in that PR department and listening to what was going on with my family ranch, that disconnect of people wanting that information every Monday morning as quick as possible and using that information to do some sales work. And then for me to go home, and that information sometimes takes longer to digest, takes longer to produce. It's not an overnight success. So that disconnect brought me back home. And when I did come back home, leadership was different for me. Leadership was more of, how can I get my kids to do what you did? So people were coming to me and saying, you are a leader because you are coming back home because you saw a need to come home, you saw a disconnect. Now I want to make sure that people, my kids, can do the same thing. And I realized I had a reason to come home, right? I had a purpose, I had a story to come home. If we don't create that, then it's hard to create those leaders, right? It's hard to create those leaders that have a purpose and have that meaning of disconnect was my purpose. I didn't like that disconnect. So my meaning and my purpose was that. And I took that as a leadership role to show my community, hey, I'm here for you. How can we eliminate that disconnect? So it's evolved throughout my career from years of like, I want to be accepted leadership because I'm moving to a new community, to now I'm accepted. And how can I help my community to prosper and be more successful?
For me, I think it was, of course, growing up on the tribe, on the reservation. It was our elders. They were always our leaders. Even our tribal government, they would come in, give advice, and of course, me being typical kid, always in trouble. I got a lot of advice and from our leaders, and now that I'm somewhat older, I guess, and a little bit grown up, I see the need to take care of our elders. And so giving back and providing that, I used to think, oh, I'm just a kid. My opinion doesn't matter. I can't change the world. But I think, it's nice to come to these conferences and see our youth, we're prepping them for the next stage. And so to see that is maybe inspires these kids coming from tribes to say, hey, you're not just a youth. You're just not a little kid. Yeah, at 7, 14 years old, you guys can make those changes. You guys can have an impact. You guys have a voice, where sometimes as a tribal kid, you don't think you have a voice, or your opinion matters, or your thought matters. And so again, just kind of having that come full circle and being impactful, I think is really powerful. And knowing that, our voices are being heard. And so again, getting back to our elders and our leadership, now how can we give back, or how can we make it better, and how can we do better? I think is a kind of the overall, I guess I always go back to the day old question of how do we create a better community? And now here's our chance. So maybe we can have create that better community and answer that question finally.
Thanks, y'all. You want to do the next one, John?
Yeah, so another question would be, how does your cultural identity and history show up in or affect how you embody leadership today?
Back in 1882, our people went on their last buffalo hunt west of Standing Rock to Hettinger, North Dakota. And there was a 60,000 head buffalo herd there. And our people killed 5,000 buffaloes in 2 days. So that must have been the happiest day of their lives, but yet it was the saddest because they never got to do that again. So that part of our history, my history, bringing the buffalo back, we started out with 6 buffaloes 23 years ago, and we fully converted from cattle to buffalo. And just my culture is everything. The buffalo I raise because that's part of who we are. And it's like a hand fitting in a glove. And one more thing is, so there I was sitting on a plateau in my little S10 truck by myself, and I was praying. And I'm not a Bible thumper or nothing like that. I just pray simple talk to my higher power, who I call God. So anyway, I'm sitting there by myself, and I'm thinking to myself, we got this land here, and what do? I need guidance. I need help with a decision. Do we fence out this whole area out for buffalo? Do you know how much that's going to cost? Do you know the labor? Do you know the material? Do you know the food, the fuel, the gloves, the salaries the workers are going to need. All those questions were in my head. So anyway, I sat there about 10 minutes, and then I looked out of my window when I started up my truck. So I'm loaded to ground already, so it's a S10. So I looked out my window, and right there, like 2 feet from my door, was an eagle feather that long on the ground. So I opened the door, and I reached down, and I grabbed it, and I said, I will fence that out. I don't care what it takes. I don't care how rough the terrain is, what the bill's going to cost when it's all said and done, and we'll get that fenced out. Well, today we got 80 miles of buffalo fence that we don't owe a penny on. So all from the workers from the community, all over the reservation, our 8 communities. We had workers from every community coming to help. We had 15, 20 people every day. My wife cooking the meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Talk about where they come from. Their night, their weekends, their family situations. But for those breakfasts and those lunches, we got to eat together as a family, look at each other, tell stories, laugh, eat a meal together. And to me, that was the most gratifying work I've done over the years, is to help another person, to be their friend, not just their employer, but to look after their needs. You know, I paid them a good salary once a week, and I see these guys all over the res different times, and we smile and shake hands. How you doing? What's going on? You know, because we have that relationship established. So that's kind of like what happened with us.
I want to ask you a quick follow-up, Ron. In that moment, did you recognize yourself as a leader? Or were you just like a dude fencing with some other dudes eating good food from Carol?
Yeah, I like the food, but hey, I had a mission. I believe in God. I believe in being alcohol and drug free. I'll say that right now. 38 years without a drink. So that right there is a big part of it. You cannot make decisions going out there flip-flopping around in a bar one week and trying to, help people. Can't do that. So with the grace of God, he allowed me to do what I do. And with all the miracles that happened in between over all these years, I can talk for a good hour and a half and tell you every miracle that happened, and you'd be scratching your head. Is that guy really telling the truth? It's like, dang right, I'm telling the truth, because that's what happened to me. That miracle, that miracle, that miracle. At year 6, year 9, year 12, year 15, this happened, that happened, that happened. God has allowed me to stay sober, and through whatever deaths, jobs, no jobs, vehicle, no vehicle, I get flat tires just like everybody else, and still didn't say, it's not worth it, go, get blank, I don't do that. So whether I was being tested or not, I don't know, maybe I was. But that's who I am. I don't like seeing my family, my people suffering from alcohol and drugs. I don't like seeing the premature deaths, the suicides, the cirrhosis, at 25 years old, dying, we're burying. That's what's happening. That's fact. My son right now is in the Marines. He's 18 years old. I'm very proud of him, but he was just like me at that age. So I just been trying to be there as a father to guide him, talk to him, give him information so he can make informed decision. If I go this way, I'm going to go that way. If I do this, I'm going to go that way, which is good. So anyway, those kind of things is what I do as a parent to try to help other kids in the community learn buffalo, learn how to respect them. That's our culture. We treat them way different than we do a beef cow. I'll put it that way.
I'm Navajo, Danae, and I was born and raised in California.
How your culture affects how you think of yourself as a leader?
My parents, I don't know, raised me in a good way. And the only thing, every summer we went back to the Navajo land, and I feel really good coming from that area. I just went over there recently and visited, and it just brings a good sense of where I'm from and how people treat me there as I come and visit, and people I don't know. And I was telling my husband, they speak to me in my language. Do I look like I'm Navajo? Because I have freckles and I don't know, but I'm full-blooded Navajo. And anyway, my mom always messes around. Those freckles came from Kit Carson, and this guy always teases me. It's like, oh, stop. But the longest walk that my people did long ago gives me strength to keep moving forward and knowing that I'm here for a purpose, and everything that my parents have given me was a lot that they gave me beyond anything you can expect in this world, and love and everything that goes along with it. And introducing God and giving me all that was important. And I bring that to my family, all the prayer and love and support. I support them all. And I believe that that's the strength that we have as parents and our business. It guides us, and it just gives us a whole new level of understanding of who we are here on earth and what we need to do to keep striving to do our best.
What was the question again?
How has your culture or history, identity affected or shown up in you?
Okay. So for me, I'm going back to the reason why I came home. When I did come home, I went through a program because I was disconnected for a while from agriculture. And I felt like I still needed that little bit of connection. So I went through a program at Texas Christian University, which has a ranch management program, and it has an awesome program. And I realized I was the first African American ever to graduate from that program. And then when I went to my community where my family lives, I also realized that's the highest population of Black producers. And I end up hearing all these barriers that a lot of them are having in the community. And I just felt like that was my draw on how I can help communicate those barriers so we can kind of not eliminate them, I'm hoping, but at least make them a little less harsh and less hard on our community. So that's really a basis of my meat company is I buy the cattle from my community. I funnel them through my meat company to tell our story. And that's really one reason. I was buying the cattle before, and we were kind of collaborating and selling truckloads together and trying to really build an economical, sustainable community through buying our cattle and selling them together. And it just really expanded to the meat company. And then really, I'm currently working on, within the meat company, on each cow has a unique ID. How can I now tell the story through that unique ID and get it back to my customers? So that's really how I'm really trying to tell our story. And I think I'm not from that community, but I have the PR knowledge, I have the marketing knowledge, I have the support of my community to help tell their story and to help hopefully alleviate some economical burden to them.
For myself, being Native American, praying, I think, is one of our key assets that we have. I heard someone say Native Americans are the most optimistic people, and I hold that to be true because of all the things we have to endure. We're still going and we're still happy. Our spirit is strong, and so, which is great. And so, me selling my beef and processing my beef, we do a lot of prayer. We're praying for our cattle. We're praying for the land. We're praying for our people, and not just the Native community, but the world as a whole. And so, what that translates to is that those cattle are grown out of prayer, sacredness, and love and care. I had to remind myself. I was a chairman for the livestock board at Acoma, and I had to remind myself because we had one old granny would come up and she didn't care if her cows got bred, and all she cared about was Those were her cows. That's what she prayed for. And those were her prayers right there in real life, in real time. And so respecting that and getting back to who we are as people and as our culture. So once that calf hits the ground during branding time, we're praying to our cows. We're talking to them. We treat them just like our family. My dad's back here, so we tease him. He's a cowboy hat right here, and I tease him. I was like, I don't know who you love more, your grandkids or your cows. And so it's just a care and love that goes into it. I'm sure you guys can all share in that. And so once that calf is coming in for branding, the ladies in our family, they wash the calf, say a prayer, a few words to that calf. And not only that, but when I take it to get processed and harvested, I'll say a prayer. I'll let that steer or cow, whatever I'm taking, let them know what's going on, what's going to happen, not to feel any way. And I'll even pray to the mom, and it's not there, but just to give my thanks and acknowledgement to say, this is what your son or your heifer or your steer is going to provide for the nutrients for our people, the nourishment for our people. And so with that, we're very grateful and we're very thankful. Don't feel bad or don't feel any way. And again, keeping with that animal husbandry, to not stress out that cow on the way to the processing plant, but treating it with the utmost respect. And so when you do eat the beef, I'm just so honored that, one, you were able to purchase it, but not only that, but entrusting in us to provide that nutrients for your family, because it's going to, I saw a little kid up here in the front, we all laughing because he's video recording us, but it's going to him. It's going to feed him. It's going to nurture his body. And I think about some of the kids, or even my own family that have disorders that can only eat all natural. And so again, it's that nutrient and nourishment that we kind of got away from. And now here's a chance to kind of help combat that or add to that responsibility, or even just to help out. And so again, that to me speaks volumes, and just knowing that we're able to provide that, and you're trusting us with that high task of providing that nutrients and food for your family is very uplifting, and makes us accountable for what we do and how we do it, from treating that calf from when it's a baby to when it's time to harvest it. So pretty awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. So we just got word that they actually need to reset this room for a movie. I thought we were going to have 5 more minutes, but we need to get moving. So with that, I just want to say thank you to all of you all for being up here. And maybe if anybody wants to chat with these folks, we can hang out outside the room for another 5 or 10 minutes and ask questions, and I encourage you all to sign up if you want the presentation. And thanks to all of you for sticking with us. Appreciate it.